Hey everyone, this is Amy Stapleton. I'm going to make a new recording to show you the latest features of Expresso. So you're going to launch Expresso by going to expresso.chatables.com, and you will see these three different panes that I'm going to talk about before I get started. So on your left-hand pane or panel, this is where you're going to manage the series and the story. Now, let me just explain. So everything that we do in terms of how we package the content and present it in our Storyteller Cafe voice app, we manage it based on a series and then stories within a series. So, you may have a series that just has like one story in it, but if you like the action and the character, you may have multiple stories. So, for example, I have created a series right now that's called Sunrise Miami, and there is just one story in it. It's the story where Jessica, the art curator, meets Jason, the young artist, and they kind of are romantically interested in each other. So that story, let's just say that story would be called Sunrise in the Everglades. Okay, so the series could be called, let's call it, look right here, Sunrise Miami, and then let's give the story the title Sunrise in the Everglades. And that story is going to have multiple episodes. So you see here where I can add episodes. This is where I'm going to manage the number of episodes that I have in my story. So the main thing to understand is that when you have a series that has multiple stories and you're using Expresso is only going to show you one story. You're going to be working on one story. It could have just one episode. It could have multiple episodes, but it's just the one story. And I'm not going to go into how you can add a second or third story to the same series. I'm going to do that later. But I just wanted you to understand the concept of the series and how the stories fits into that. So we have a log line for the series and a log line for the story. Don't worry too much about that, because as the editor, I am going to be the one that will make sure this has the correct information. What we do with this is that we use it to give the listener a preview of the story. So we might say something like, Sunrise Miami is let's say a dramatic romance story unfolding across, let's say, actually, let me say it's is a dramatic romance series unfolding across multiple stories, each with, let's just say, each with 3 episodes. And here, for this particular story, I may say, I play the role of Jessica, and Matthew plays the role of Jason, the hot and steamy artist. So you notice here that I say I say I play the role. It's going to be the voice of your narrator that will say this log line, right? So what you're going to do at some point is you're going to choose your voice, the person that you want to narrate, the virtual character that you want to narrate your story, and then that's the one that's going to say it. So it makes sense to just say, hey listener, I play the role of Jessica, and Matthew plays the role of Jason, the hot steamy artist, in this fun romantic story. Okay? All right, so we've got that done. This particular story is it's a little unusual because it has 2 narrators. Joanna plays Jessica and Matthew plays Jason. We'll see that in just a minute. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and add my first episode. All right, and you'll see here that I've got this episode thumbnail where I can make notes about what the episode is about, and if I decide to save some responses, if I want to remember how the listener responded to specific questions, those will show up here. So I know that my first episode is going to be narrated by Joanna, so I'm going to go in here and I'm going to click these voices. This stands for synthetic speech markup language, and this is just the language tag, whether it's US or Great Britain. The main thing is just always click these two and then select the voice that you want to use. If there's a conversational voice available, always select that one. So I'm going to pick Joanna. All right, so I've already set up my series, my story name. I've added my first episode. What I typically do is I just close this panel out so I don't have to worry about it anymore. This panel over here on the far right hand side is where we create something called an ABC file. You are not going to have to worry about this. This is strictly for me and for Wayne to make these stories available through our our platform so that they can be broadcast by Amazon Alexa on that platform. So don't worry about that. You can close that out with this if you want. I personally just don't like the really wide screen, so I'm gonna just leave it open. I'm just used to working that way, but it's personal preference. All right. Remember, I'm in a brand new episode. This episode has nothing in it yet. So I'm going to add my first story element. Now, I can start the story with a conversation, but I kind of have sort of a template that I use in my mind where I have the narrator introduce themselves. So I like to name these thumbnails, and you'll see that basically you have one thumbnail per content block. And so I'm going to call this one greeting. And then you'll notice when I click over here, these names match. All right, so I'm going to have Jessica introduce herself. Again, remember when we write these stories, they need to be conversational, so they need to be in like a talking style. So she's going to say, hi there, I'm Jessica. Nice to see you in the art gallery. Right, because this is sort of what it's about. We're going to make the listener feel like they're in the art gallery. You were here early. And then maybe she wants to ask a question. So I'm going to add a simple conversational element. It's just going to be a yes-no question, and she will say, let's see, so do you enjoy modern art? All right, so this is going to be a question, enjoy art? And if they say yes, right, an affirmative response, she will respond with, well, that's, let's just make it sound kind of British. Well, that's brilliant. You'll really love the show that we have lined up for tonight. And if they say no, then she'll say something like, well, I hope you're open-minded. Our show tonight features a young contemporary artist. All right, so you've started your story and you've got your first conversational engagement, and you can see I can navigate through these blocks by either clicking the thumbnails, right, or I can also scroll. If I keep my cursor over here on the thumbnails, the whole screen scrolls up and down. But I can actually, if I want to see up here, I can move my cursor over here to activate this middle scroll bar, and I can scroll all the way to the top. All right. Okay. I would just say that sometimes you get a little bit confused, and just be careful, because if you do want to delete a block, this is where you do it. You delete the block from this thumbnail. So make sure you've selected the right block and don't delete the wrong one. Okay, so the other feature that's really important that I wanted to show you is the audio playback. I recommend that as you're writing your story, you take advantage of the audio playback to hear how things sound. Now, it's going to play in the voice that you have chosen over here in this panel, all right? So I've chosen the Joanna conversational voice, so it should go and get me the Joanna conversational voice so I can hear how this sounds. Actually, let me think. I just remembered. Joanna is not Jessica in my story, so it's going to sound weird to me anyway, unless it's Amy. So Jessica is from Great Britain, so I'm going to use the Amy voice, and we'll hear it play right now.
Hi there. I'm Jessica. Nice to see you in the art gallery. You're here early.
Okay, so that doesn't sound too bad. That might be able to fine tune it a little bit, but it sounds okay. So let's see how her question sounds.
So do you enjoy modern art?
That sounds good. Let's see how this response sounds if they say, yes, I do.
Well, that's brilliant. You'll really love the show that we have lined up for tonight.
Okay, so that sounds good. So I'm just going to not listen to this one. What I'm going to do now is I want her to continue talking, and so I'm going to add another story element, and she's going to introduce the young artist Jason Butterfield. She's going to say, the artist name is Jason Butterfield. And then she's going to go on to tell you a bunch of stuff about it. Blah, 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 blah. I'm not going to write that in there, right? But let's just assume that she talks about Jason. All right, so that's the block where she talks about Jason. And then maybe she wants to ask you an open question. We've gotten feedback from listeners that say the open questions, they really like those. But remember, they're a little bit tricky. You're not going to actually process what the person says. So you need to think about how you can make the question and then the corresponding, let's say, story part sound natural, like you're at least acknowledging what the person said. So I'm going to try a question where she says, what's your favorite color? All right, let me set that up by saying, let me ask. All right, so let's see how that sounds.
The artist's name is Jason Butterfield. Let me ask. What's your favorite color?
So that "let me ask" sounds a little weird. I might change that, but you get the gist of it. And I'm going to label this one favorite color. All right. Now, obviously, we are not going. Let's say they respond by saying blue. Okay, we're not going to know that that's what they said. They may say orange, pink, blue, whatever. So we're going to continue the story, and she'll say something like, "That's a lovely color. I wonder what that choice says about your personality." Jason says people who prefer darker colors like blue or purple are more passionate, while people who tend towards lighter shades, such as yellow or pink, are more thoughtful. Okay, I just made that up, right? But it sounds plausible, right? So, say color choice. Now, after she says that, she's going to continue on with the story. So I'm just going to continue talking about how her boss made her jump on a flight to Miami. And so then you can continue on, and you might decide, I'm going to add another simple conversational element, asking them, have they ever jumped on a flight without, very spontaneously? Or I can add a complex question, and this could be something like, would you consider yourself very spontaneous? And if they say yes, then she might say, I'm not spontaneous at all. I wish I were. Have you ever just, maybe it's say, are you so spontaneous that you would jump on a plane with no luggage? Okay, that's kind of a weird question, but let's just go with that one, because this assumes that they have responded, yes, they are spontaneous. And if they say yes, then she'll something like, well, your You're quite the risk taker. And I really admire that. And if they say no, so they are spontaneous, but they wouldn't jump on a plane without luggage, then she'll say, I'm glad you're not unreasonable. All right. I don't really like that, but I'm just thinking of this on the fly, so you could probably come up with something better. If they say they're not very spontaneous, then she's going to show some affinity with them because she doesn't consider herself spontaneous either. Then you're like me. I'm not wish I could spell this. I'm not spontaneous either, and I wish I were. Would you ever consider jumping on a plane last minute? They say yes, and she says, that's really great. I never thought I would do that. And here she says, I can understand. I never thought I'd do that either. All right, so I'm setting up so that all of these responses are going to flow into what she says next. And let me go back here. I'm just going to label this. Are you spontaneous? Okay. And then in this part, she wants to say something like, she actually did get on a plane at the last minute. I still can't believe it, but I hopped on a flight to Miami at the very last minute. And then she explains, why she did that. So this is going to be trip to Miami. That's what this one was about. Okay, so you can see I've kind of already got pretty good flow of my story here, right? She's greeting you. She's asking, do you enjoy modern art? Responding to that, then she asks you, she tells you a little bit about Jason Butterfield. She asks, what's your favorite color? She's like, I wonder what that says about you. And then she's talking about Jason. Do you consider yourself very spontaneous? She asks you a follow-up question based on that, and then she gets kind of further into a story to talk about what was going on with her trip to Miami. Now, there's something important that I want to show you. Actually, there's two things. So let me just show you, if you decide you want to move some of these blocks around, or perhaps let's say I really want to insert an open question right here before the simple question. You can add the open question, and let's say the question is, how many art galleries, or let's say how often do you visit art shows? Let's just say that. All right. I'm going to go ahead and label it. Okay. Now, all right, so you want to get it up here, right? So what do? What you do is you just click on this and you drag it with your mouse up to your location. And all right, so now I'm going to drop it right here. Now, do you see why it's really helpful when you label these blocks? Because then when you're dragging stuff around, you know where you want to position it, okay? Now, let's say I've been working on this and I'm like, I don't really like that question. That question isn't very good. So I'm just going to delete this block. You delete it by clicking on here and say yes, delete. Again, just make sure you're choosing the right block, because I have inadvertently deleted the wrong one before, and it's very annoying. All right. If you decide I don't want to delete it, just say never mind. But if you are going to delete it, then say yes, delete, and get rid of that one. Okay. The other big thing that I wanted to show you before I finished, because I know this is running long, I wanted to show you something very important. When you ask a yes/no question, you have the ability to save the response so that your narrator can remember what was said. Actually, the memory is going to hold for your whole story, right? So this is enjoy art. She's going to say, I'm going to say, save this response, right? And the response will be labeled enjoy art because that is what I have, how I have titled my thumbnail block here for this content block. So if I go back over to my control panel for my story, we will see that I have added one story variable and it's enjoy art. Now, if I want to use that variable later, let me close this back up again. Let's say towards the end of the story, you want her to make a remark that references whether they are someone who enjoys art or modern art or does not. So I'm going to do that by adding a simple element, and then you'll see I have this drop down and I can refer to this response, enjoy art. So this means that they said yes, they do. This means they said no, they don't. I typically label these blocks as recall, enjoy art, like recall whatever the variable was. So Jessica's going to say, I'm really glad that you enjoy modern art. I know you'll love Jason's show. And here she's going to say, I know you're not a big fan of modern art, but I think you might like Jason's show, right? And then she'll say something about, Jason is not your typical artist. And then, she'll go on with that. And let's say at the end of this block, she actually says, goodbye, it was great talking to you. I typically label the last block sign off. All right, so I know that the character signing off in this particular block. All right, so I've created my episode. Obviously, it's not a great episode. Now let's say that I want to add another episode. So I can do that here. And typically, you're going to have the same narrator, but I've enjoyed experimenting with having multiple narrators so that they sort of play off one another. So let's say that for this episode within my same story, I'm going to have Matthew as the narrator. Okay, so I'm going to choose his voice. All right, I'm going to select that episode. I'm going to close this out so I don't get confused. And now here you see I have the blank editor again. So I'm going to start with my first story element. It's going to be my greeting. Actually, and let me do something different. I'm going to delete this block and I'm going to start with a reference to this variable, right? Enjoy art. So he's going to say, hi there, Jessica told me that you're a big fan of modern art. That's really great. And here he's going to say, hi there. Jessica said you're not the biggest fan of modern art. So I really appreciate you giving my show a chance. And then, he'll launch into whatever else he wants to say. We can kind of see how this sounds. Again, I'm going to play, and it should play in Matthew's voice.
Hi there. Jessica told me that you're a big fan of modern art. That's really great.
Let's see how this one sounds.
Hi there. Jessica said you're not the biggest fan of modern art, so I really appreciate you giving my show a chance.
Okay. Oh, I think I forgot to show you that. Let's say that you have multiple lines in here. I'm just going to copy this one. But you only want to hear the first part and you're playing it.
Hi there. Jessica said
Just
you're not the biggest...
Hit the stop button. It's kind of intuitive, but I just wanted to show you that that's how that works. Okay, so then the other big thing is that you are going to want to download your story, and this will create a file. You'll see I'm downloading it. It's going to create a file in a weird format, but the format is what we use for this for the Expresso editor. And when you are ready to start working on the story again, you can just launch a brand new Expresso and you will choose file. This is going to go to your, you'll get a pop-up that shows you where you save the file, and then you just select that file. This is Sunrise in the Everglades. Just select it and it's going to populate your editor again. Okay. I would recommend that you do the download periodically, because something may happen and you may be working along and then, I don't know, just whatever, hit some button inadvertently. So I like to go ahead and download periodically. We are going to be able to let you save, let's just call it to the cloud. We'll have that pretty soon. Well, you will log in and you'll be able to do that. But for right now, I recommend that you download periodically. Okay, so I think that's a pretty good walkthrough of all the different elements. And again, if you ever have any questions about how this works, just let me know. All right, thanks a lot.